At 2:13 in the morning, I watched her on my night vision camera. HOA Karen in a red blazer crouched beside my sprinkler box with a wrench in one hand and a gas can in the other. She thought disabling my peppermint misters would teach me a lesson, but instead she opened the gates to a skunk invasion. 2 days later, animal control found her poodle shaking in a hazmat tent. Her rugs, her curtains, her walls soaked in skunk spray, so toxic the house was declared uninhabitable. She screamed at the HOA, demanded $18,000 in emergency restitution. But what she didn't know was, I had the footage, the sabotage, the receipts, and when I exposed her, I didn't just stop her fines against me. I uncovered a web of corruption that would bring down the entire HOA board. This is not just a story of skunks. It's a story of controlled justice and nature fighting back harder than I ever could. I never pictured myself in my mid-40s, crouched in wet grass at 3 in the morning, armed with a flashlight and a heart full of quiet rage, trying to outwit both a vindictive neighbor and an entire family of skunks. Yet there I was, a widowed father with cedar mulch under my nails and peppermint oil in my veins, defending the small patch of peace I'd carved out for my daughter after the world had already taken too much from us. My name is Daniel Hensley. 3 years ago, I buried my wife, Claire, after a cruel, lightning-fast illness that left no time for goodbyes. When the dust settled and the condolences dried up, I packed what remained of our life into a moving truck and drove south until the road ended at Briar Glen, a tidy tree-lined cul-de-sac that promised quiet luxury living and wildlife corridor views. I wanted green. I wanted safe. I wanted a place where Emma could grow up without hearing hospital monitors in her dreams. We got the green. The rest came with Judith Karen Mallory attached. Everyone just called her Karen the way people say tornado right before they duck for cover. The house was modest, single-story ranch, pale gray, siding 3 bedrooms, and a backyard that spilled straight into a protected strip of oak and pine, everyone proudly called the Preserve. Raccoons visited like clockwork. Owls narrated the nights. Deer grazed at dawn, as if our fences were suggestions rather than borders. I loved every untamed inch of it. Emma did not love the skunks. Our first week in the new house, a pair of bold juveniles discovered the warm cavity beneath our deck. One raised its tail in the dead of night and unloaded a cloud of weaponized stench that rolled through the vents like tear gas. For 14 straight days, our home smelled like death wearing burnt rubber cologne. Emma, 10 years old and already carrying more grief than any child should, cried every morning because her hair, her backpack, her soul reeked of trash juice. I'd hug her on the driveway while the school bus waited, both of us pretending the other kids couldn't smell it. I swore it would never happen again. Most people would have called exterminators set lethal traps or scattered poison like confetti. I spent 15 years as a municipal environmental engineer. I knew how ecosystems breathe, how one dead skunk becomes a feast for something else, how poison travels uphill through roots and water tables, and eventually into someone's child. I wasn't going to murder my way to peace, so I built something better. Motion sensors low to the ground, silent pumps, reservoirs of water laced with peppermint essential oil, and a measured trace of capsaicin, the active heat in chili peppers. Skunks, cats, raccoons, and apparently every mammal with a nose hate both scents with biblical passion. A quick, harmless mist at ankle level was all it took. They'd sniff recoil and waddle off in search of less hostile real estate. I installed the system along the entire back fence line, hidden behind boxwoods and wax myrtles. For 9 glorious months, it worked perfectly. No sprays, no tears. Emma played barefoot in the grass again. Our old lab, Jasper, quit sleeping with one eye open. The owls kept narrating. The deer kept grazing. Life felt, for the first time in years, almost gentle. Then Karen noticed the sprinkler heads glinting in the morning sun. I was tightening a hose bib near the garage when I heard the unmistakable click-clack of sensible heels on asphalt. "Good morning, Mr. Hensley," she sang, voice sharp enough to cut glass and sweet enough to make you bleed. She wore the red blazer like armor HOA president pin, gleaming over her heart the way generals wear stars. "Morning," I answered, wiping my hands on a rag. Her eyes flicked past me to the backyard. I couldn't help but notice your unusual landscaping addition. Scented sprinklers, how very inventive. Motion-activated deterrents, I said, keeping my tone civil. Keeps the wildlife at a respectful distance. Completely humane. She offered the kind of smile that never reaches the eyes. We have standards in Briar Glen. Modifications visible from adjacent properties require prior approval. They're in my private backyard 6 inches off the ground behind a hedge. You'd need binoculars and a grudge to see them. Her smile thinned. File the variance request, properly this time. And until it's approved, I'd consider deactivating the system. Neighborly courtesy, you understand. She turned on her heel before I could answer Blazer, flashing like a matador's cape. Emma watched the whole exchange from her bedroom window. When I came inside, she muttered, "She looks like an angry tomato wearing pearls." I laughed despite myself. But I knew with the cold certainty that settles in your gut when storm clouds gather that this was only the opening shot. Karen had ruled Briar Glen for over a decade. Lawns were her kingdom bylaws, her scripture and dissent, nothing more than weeds to be poisoned at the root. She had no idea what she'd just stepped into, and I had no idea how far she was willing to go to win. The first official salvo arrived exactly 9 days later, taped to my front door in a bright yellow plastic sleeve, like a parking ticket from hell. Notice of violation. Briar Glen Homeowners Association. Violation. Unauthorized landscaping structures visible from adjacent lot lines. Corrective action required. Remove equipment within 14 days or accrue fines of $100 per day, issued by Judith K. Mallory, President. I actually laughed out loud in the driveway. Visible from adjacent lot lines, the only adjacent lot was Karen's, and between us stood a 8-foot wall of wax myrtle I'd planted the week we moved in. You'd have to stand on a roof with a periscope to spot my sprinkler heads. Emma read it over my shoulder. She's literally making stuff up. Welcome to HOA warfare, kiddo. I took photos, wrote a polite but firm rebuttal, attached the original variance request I'd submitted 4 months earlier, still unanswered, and dropped everything in the official HOA mailbox at the community center. Crickets. 2 weeks later, a second yellow notice. This one claimed non-conforming aesthetic impact. Still no rule cited, still no response to my letters. Then the fines began $300, then $600. Then a threatening letter from a law firm that specialized in collections for petty tyrants. I'd dealt with bureaucrats before. I knew their playbook: drown you in paper until you give up. Most people do. I wasn't most people. One Saturday morning, I carried my 3-ring binder of bylaws, photos, and correspondence to the monthly HOA meeting at the clubhouse. The room smelled of burnt coffee and fear. Retirees clutched travel mugs like life rafts. Karen sat at the long table in her red blazer, flanked by Vice President Cole Dawson, slick hair, permanent smirk, and Gerald the treasurer, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. When the floor opened for resident concerns, I raised my hand. Mr. Hensley, Karen cooed as if my name tasted like spoiled milk. I walked to the microphone. I'm here about the fines levied against my property for a backyard wildlife deterrent that is legal, humane, and invisible from the street. Cole leaned forward. The board has determined the right to deem any installation a nuisance to adjacent properties. Adjacent property singular, I corrected, yours. And only if someone trespasses into my yard to see it. A couple of nervous laughs rippled through the room. Karen's lips disappeared into a razor line. The board will take your appeal under advisement. Translation: go pound sand. I placed a thick manila envelope on the table in front of Cole. Annotated bylaws, photos, county zoning confirmation that my system violated 0 ordinances. I didn't say another word. I just looked Karen in the eye, long enough for her to understand I wasn't blinking. She didn't look away, but her fingers tightened around her pen until the plastic creaked. That night, I added 2 more cameras, one pointed at the control box, one covering the side gate. Call it paranoia. Call it pattern recognition. 2 nights later at 2:13 a.m., the motion alert chimed on my phone. I rolled out of bed, heart already hammering. Jasper stood at the hallway, ears pricked, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Emma's door stayed closed. She'd learned to sleep through sirens and grief, but not through this. I opened the app. There, bathed in grainy infrared, was Karen. Red blazer and all like a bloodstain against the night. She was crouched by my control box with a flashlight between her teeth and a small wrench in her gloved hand. She worked quickly, clumsily muttering curses I could hear through the microphone. Stupid thing running all night. Think you're so clever. Time you learned. She yanked wires, snipped a sensor line clean with garden shears, twisted the main valve until peppermint oil burst from a cracked tube and soaked the grass like cheap perfume. Then she scurried back the way she came, orthopedic shoes silent on the mulch. I sat on the edge of the bed phone, glowing in the dark, recording every second. Jasper rested his head on my knee and whined. Yeah, buddy, I whispered. She just declared war. By dawn, I had temporary patches in place, old irrigation parts, duct tape, prayer. The system limped along at half strength, but it was enough to keep the skunks confused for another day or two. I emailed the footage to the entire board with a single line. Attached evidence of criminal tampering and vandalism of private property. I expect full reimbursement and reversal of all fines by end of week. Karen's reply came 17 minutes later. Subject, cease dissemination of falsified materials. Defamatory accusations will be treated as harassment. This is your final warning. JKM. She didn't deny it. She didn't explain. She threatened. I forwarded everything to a lawyer friend who still owed me a favor from my city engineering days. Then I sat on the back porch and waited for nature to take its course. Because when you remove the only thing keeping the skunks at bay, nature doesn't send you a polite memo. It sends you a striped apocalypse. The skunks returned on a Wednesday night, silent as assassins. I'd fallen asleep on the couch with the repair manual open across my chest. At 1:47 a.m., the motion lights snapped on, followed by the half-dead sprinklers giving a pathetic 6-second wheeze of peppermint mist. Too little, too late. Then came the smell. It didn't creep in. It detonated. A living wall of sulfur, burnt garlic, and something ancient and evil that clawed its way straight into your brainstem. Jasper bolted upright and howled. Emma appeared at the top of the stairs in her pajamas, eyes wide, hand clamped over her nose. Dad, it's back. It's worse. I already knew. The stench was inside the walls now, riding the air vents like a demon on a freight train. I opened the sliding door and stepped onto the deck. 2 plump skunks were curled up under the bottom step like they'd booked the place on Airbnb. One lifted its head, gave me a lazy blink, and went back to sleep. The message was clear: your peppermint treaty has expired, human. I closed the door, sealed it with painter's tape, and turned every ceiling fan to hurricane. It didn't help. The smell colonized the curtains, the couch, Emma's hair, my soul. We ended up sleeping in the car with the windows cracked and the AC blasting recycled despair. The next morning, the entire cul-de-sac smelled like a tire fire at a garlic festival. And that's when I learned, along with the rest of Briar Glen, that Karen's house had taken the direct hit. I was pouring cereal when Emma ran in from the front porch, phone in hand, eyes huge. Dad, you have to see this. I stepped outside. Half a block away, Karen's pristine white colonial looked like a crime scene. A giant industrial dumpster sat on her curb. Men in white Tyvek suits and respirator masks were hauling out furniture. A cream leather sofa, silk drapes, an entire dining room set wrapped in plastic. A commercial ozone machine the size of a refrigerator roared in her doorway, blasting air outward like it was trying to exorcise the devil himself. Karen stood on her lawn in a bathrobe and paper mask, arms crossed so tight I thought her elbows might snap. Even from 50 yards, I could see the tears cutting clean streaks down her cheeks. Bixby, her miniature poodle, was being carried out in a pet carrier wearing a tiny cone of shame and looking like he'd lost a fight with a sewer. Emma whispered, "They say both skunks cornered inside her sunroom. Double direct spray. One got the dog, one got the Persian rugs. It's biblical." I didn't cheer. I didn't pump my fist. I just felt the cold, heavy certainty of consequences finally catching up to someone who thought rules only applied to other people. Word traveled faster than the smell. By noon, the neighborhood WhatsApp was on fire. Someone posted a drone photo of Karen's dumpster overflowing with ruined upholstery. Someone else posted a slow-motion video of a hazmat guy gagging behind his mask. A third person started a GoFundMe titled "Send Bixby to Therapy" that raised $400. In 20 minutes before it was taken down for violating community guidelines. Karen, of course, called an emergency HOA meeting for that very evening to be held in the community center because no living soul could enter her house without risking permanent olfactory damage. I showered 3 times, changed clothes twice, and still smelled like a skunk's revenge fantasy. Emma begged to come. I told her this one was mine. The clubhouse was packed. Standing room only. People wore actual masks, some N95s, some scented gaiters, one guy in a full-face respirator like he was entering Chernobyl. The mood was half town hall, half gladiator arena. Karen took the stage in a navy blazer, her red one presumably still being incinerated. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her voice cracked on the first syllable. This meeting is called to address a clear and present health crisis caused by unauthorized wildlife-attracting devices that have disrupted migration patterns and driven dangerous animals into residential spaces. Translation: this is all Daniel Hensley's fault. She pointed a trembling finger in my direction. Mr. Hensley's illegal sprinkler system has created an environmental imbalance. I stood up slowly. With respect, Madam President, my system was designed to prevent exactly what happened. It worked perfectly until someone vandalized it on camera at 2 a.m. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I just held up my phone and hit play. The room had a projector. Someone had mercifully left it on. The screen filled with night vision footage, Karen in her red blazer, wrench in hand, yanking wires, muttering threats. The audio was crystal clear. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A few people actually applauded. Karen went the color of skim milk. Cole tried to intervene. This is highly inappropriate. I cut him off. What's inappropriate is felony vandalism, followed by attempted extortion of HOA funds to pay for the consequences. I clicked to the next clip, the community center parking lot camera showing Karen's SUV at 2:10 a.m. with a red gas can in her trunk. She'd chickened out on arson, but the intent was there in 4K. The room went dead quiet. Then Rosa, the mom, from Pine Hollow Drive, stood up. I move we suspend all fines against Mr. Hensley and demand Mrs. Mallory resign immediately. Seconded, thirded, fourth dead. Karen opened her mouth closed. It opened it again. Nothing came out. Tamara, the young secretary who'd been quietly taking notes all year, spoke for the first time, looked up, and said very calmly, "Madam President, you're out of order." Karen stared at her like she'd been betrayed by her own shadow. The vote was unanimous. Just like that, the Queen was dethroned. I walked out into the warm night air that still carried a faint, tragic whiff of skunk victory. My phone buzzed with texts from neighbors I'd never even met. "Thank you. We owe you. Can you help me install the same system?" I exhaled a breath I felt like I'd been holding for 9 months. But as I drove home past Karen's dark fan-blasting house, I saw her silhouette on the porch, head in her hands, shoulders shaking. For one brief second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then I remembered the smell still living in my couch cushions, and the terror in my daughter's eyes, and the pity evaporated. The skunks had spoken, and for once, the neighborhood had listened. For exactly 8 days, Briar Glen felt like a different planet. The fines vanished from my online portal as if they'd never existed. A polite letter arrived from the HOA's attorney, new stationery, no Karen signature, enclosing a check that covered every replacement part, every hour of labor, and even the industrial-strength odor neutralizer I'd bought for the living room rug. The memo line read simply, "Peaceful resolution of recent landscaping matter." Emma framed the check before I could cash it. People waved when I walked Jasper. Someone left a 6-pack of local IPA on the porch with a note that said, "To the Skunk Whisperer." Rosa's husband showed up on a Saturday with shovels and a case of beer, and together we trenched sensor wire along their back fence while the kids ran through both yards, shrieking with water guns. The air smelled like fresh dirt and possibility. I should have known it was the calm before the second storm. It started with a 3:47 a.m. neighborhood-wide email. Subject: urgent biohazard contamination. Immediate action required. Karen had risen from the ashes like a sequined phoenix. The message was 3 rambling paragraphs of pure weapons-grade victimhood. My reckless, unsanctioned devices had destabilized the entire ecosystem of trust. The skunk invasion had caused catastrophic and ongoing damage to her home, her health, and this part made me choke on my coffee, the emotional equilibrium of Bixby, a registered emotional support animal. She was requesting $18,300 in emergency relief from HOA funds for professional biohazard remediation, complete HVAC duct replacement, disposal of irredeemable soft furnishings, trauma counseling for Bixby, $450. Emma read it aloud in a dramatic movie trailer voice, and then collapsed on the kitchen floor, laughing until she couldn't breathe. She wants us to pay for therapy, For the dog that chased the skunks into her house. Apparently, Bixby is suffering from PTSD. Bixby is a poodle who wears sweaters. His biggest trauma was running out of organic lamb treats. By noon, the email chain had exploded. Because Karen forgot or didn't care to BCC the neighborhood, every reply was visible. The reply-alls came fast and furious. Will my dues also cover aromatherapy for the skunks? Pretty sure my homeowner's insurance doesn't have a self-inflicted stupidity clause, but I'll check. Motion to buy Mr. Hensley a cape. Then someone attached a cropped still from my backyard camera, Karen at 2 a.m. Red blazer glowing under infrared, like a horror movie villain wrench raised in triumph. The caption read, "When you break the thing that's protecting you from the thing." Within an hour, the photo was everywhere. Nextdoor, the private Facebook group, even the Ring Neighbors app. Memes followed. Someone superimposed Karen's face on Thanos, snapping half the universe away. Someone else photoshopped her into the Jurassic Park T-Rex in the side mirror scene, with the caption, "Objects in mirror are stinkier than they appear." Karen's empire was crumbling in real time, and the comment section was the Colosseum. That night, 27 households gathered in the park gazebo without any formal invitation. Folding chairs appeared. Someone brought lemonade in a cooler. Someone else brought cookies. Kids chased fireflies while the adults passed around phones showing the latest memes. It felt like the neighborhood had collectively exhaled for the first time in years. Rosa raised her plastic cup to Daniel, who fought the HOA and won. Everyone cheered. I tried to wave it off, but they weren't having it. Phil, the retired widower 2 doors down from Karen, leaned over and whispered, "I saw her that night, you know. Headlamp bobbing behind your fence. Heard the metal clank. Didn't put it together until the video." I squeezed his shoulder. "You just became my favorite witness." Tamara, quiet, sharp-eyed secretary, who had always seemed allergic to conflict, found me near the swings. "She's not done," she said without preamble. "Cole's trying to bury everything. Seal the meeting minutes. Mark the whole thing. Confidential personnel matter. Pay her claim quietly and pretend the monarchy is still intact. Let them try." Tamara smiled for the first time I'd ever seen. "I thought you might say that." She slipped me a new USB drive. Community center, parking lot. Different night. You'll want to see this before the next meeting. I went home, kissed Emma goodnight, and plugged it in. The footage was time-stamped 3 nights after the original sabotage. Karen's SUV rolled up at 2:10 a.m. Headlights off. The trunk popped. Out came a red plastic gas can, 5-gallon full sloshing. She carried it toward my back fence, moving fast, almost running. Halfway there, she froze, looked straight up at the community center camera that apparently still worked, and retreated. She shoved the can back in the trunk and peeled out. She had come prepared to burn my system, maybe the whole yard, to the ground, and changed her mind at the last second. I stared at the frozen frame of her silhouette, clutching that can like Lady Macbeth with gasoline instead of blood. This wasn't petty HOA nonsense anymore. This was attempted arson. I forwarded the file to my lawyer with one line: "We're done playing nice." The following morning, I hand-delivered a certified letter to the HOA Dropbox and carbon-copied the city attorney's office. It outlined every act of vandalism, the attempted arson, the fraudulent $18,300 claim, and ended with a single calm demand: full independent audit of the last 3 years of HOA finances, or I file civil and criminal complaints by end of week. I signed it. Respectfully, but not for much longer, Daniel Hensley. Then I hit send on the neighborhood email chain too, no BCC this time. Let the sunshine in. Karen's curtains stayed closed all day. Across the street, the industrial fans kept screaming like banshees, trying to blow the stink of her own consequences out into the wind. And for the first time since we moved to Briar Glen, the wind was finally blowing in our direction. The next HOA meeting was scheduled for a Thursday at 7. I arrived at 6:47 wearing the same plain gray button-up I wear to parent-teacher conferences. No theatrics, no binder the size of a phone book. Just a single black flash drive in my shirt pocket and the quiet certainty of a man who has run out of patience. The community center parking lot was already full. People stood in clusters, speaking in low electric voices, the way crowds do a minute before a storm breaks. Inside, every seat was taken and latecomers lined the walls. The air smelled like popcorn and revolution. Cole Dawson took the head table, looking like he'd aged 5 years. In 5 days, hair uncombed, tie, crooked antacids, rattling in his pocket like maracas. Gerald the treasurer sat beside him, eyes fixed on the floor as if it might open and swallow him whole. Tamara was already at her secretary station, fingers poised over her laptop, expression unreadable. Karen was nowhere to be seen. Cole banged the gavel twice. Let's bring this meeting to order. The side door opened and a woman in a navy pantsuit walked straight down the center aisle. Mid-40s, calm eyes, county badge, clipped to her belt. Behind her, 2 uniformed deputies lingered by the exit like silent bookends. "Mr. Cole Dawson," she asked, voice carrying without effort. Cole half rose. "Yes." "You've been served." She placed a thick envelope in front of him. "Mr. Gerald Finch." Gerald took his envelope with shaking hands. The woman turned to the room. "For the record, my name is Assistant County Attorney Marisa Delgado. The county has opened an active investigation into allegations of financial malfeasance, conspiracy to conceal misconduct, and misuse of HOA funds by certain board members. All current enforcement actions are suspended pending audit. No votes will be taken tonight. This meeting is adjourned." She nodded once to Tamara, then walked out. The deputies followed. You could have heard a pin drop on carpet. Then Rosa started clapping. Slowly at first, then the entire room. Someone whistled. Someone else shouted, "Hallelujah!" Phones came out. Live stream started. Within 30 seconds, the video was already titled, "HOA Board Gets Served Mid-Meeting and Climbing Local Reddit." Cole tried to bang the gavel again, but the head flew off and bounced across the table. He gave up and sat down hard. Tamara stood. "Since the official meeting has been canceled, I move. We hold an informal resident forum, right here, right now, to discuss next steps. All in favor." The roar was deafening. We rearranged the chairs into a giant circle, like group therapy, for a whole subdivision. Tamara took the floor. "First order of business, we need an interim board that the county will recognize." Volunteers. Hands shot up. Mine did not. I'd done my part. Tonight belonged to everyone else. Rosa was nominated treasurer. Phil, my new favorite witness, was nominated sergeant at arms. A quiet software engineer named Vikram, who'd been fined for painting his front door unauthorized, teal, became vice president. And Tamara, steady unflappable Tamara, was elected interim president by acclamation. Someone passed around a box of donuts like communion wafers. Then the stories started pouring out. Grace stood up, voice shaking with anger and relief, and told how Karen had denied her solar panel permit 3 times, even though the county had already approved it. An elderly couple described being cited for a garden gnome. A young father showed photos of the $200 fine for planting native wildflowers because they weren't on the approved species list. Every confession was met with groans, laughter, and the same stunned realization we'd all been terrorized by the same woman, and we'd all been too afraid, too busy, or too polite to speak up. By 10 o'clock, the circle had become a family reunion nobody knew we needed. Phone numbers were exchanged. A group chat titled Briar Glen Reborn hit 120 members before I got home. I slipped out quietly, flash drive, still in my pocket, victory tasting like burnt coffee and hope. At 10:47 p.m., my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I answered. A small cracked voice I almost didn't recognize said, "Mr. Hensley." "Yes, it's Judith Mallory." Silence stretched between us like a high wire. "I'm calling from a hotel in Raleigh," she went on. "I'm not coming back tonight. Maybe not ever. I needed you to know I'm resigning everything. The presidency, the committees, all of it. I'll sign whatever they put in front of me." I waited. "I watched the live stream," she whispered. "I saw them cheer when the county walked in. I deserved that. I deserved worse." Another long pause. "I'm sorry," she said, and it sounded like the words physically hurt. "For the wires. For the gas can. For making your little girl cry on the driveway that first week. I was scared and mean. There's no excuse." I closed my eyes. Somewhere in the background, I heard Bixby whine. "Thank you for telling me," I said. "I don't expect forgiveness." "You don't have it yet," I answered honestly. "But you've taken the first step. That matters." She let out a shaky breath that might have been a sob. "Good night, Mrs. Mallory." "Good night, Mr. Hensley." The line went dead. I stood on my dark porch for a long time, listening to the crickets and the soft hiss of my newly repaired sprinklers doing their quiet nightly patrol. For the first time in 3 years, the night didn't feel heavy. It felt like the beginning of something. And for once, The thing beginning wasn't a fight. It was a neighborhood. Spring slid into early summer like a long, syrupy evenings, when the air smelled of cut grass and distant barbecues instead of skunk and tyranny. The old board was officially dissolved. An independent forensic auditor paid for by the county, not our dues, descended on the HOA books like a cheerful bloodhound. Within 10 days, she found 9 700s in miscellaneous outdoor enhancements that all led like breadcrumbs to Karen's own address premium topsoil, a private mosquito misting contract, and a koi pond filtration upgrade mysteriously billed as community water feature maintenance. Cole lawyered up and stopped answering his doorbell. Gerald took early retirement and moved to Florida to live with his sister. Tamara ran the interim board with the calm efficiency of someone who had been waiting her whole life for this moment. Emma and I finished the upgraded deterrent system together. We replaced every sensor, swapped the old nozzles for whisper-quiet ultrasonic Meisters, and added a tiny solar-powered LED strips that glowed soft amber at night, pretty enough that even the new board approved them unanimously. On the back fence, we hung 3 hand-painted signs Emma designed in art class. Wildlife Safe Zone, Non-Lethal Peppermint Mist in use. Please let nature be nature hearts. Neighbors started showing up unannounced, with questions instead of complaints. Phil brought peach cobbler and left with a full set of wiring diagrams. Rosa's husband Miguel installed his own system and texted me a video of a very offended raccoon doing an actual cartoon double take before fleeing. By mid-June, there wasn't a single skunk incident on the entire street. The owls still narrated. The deer still treated fences as suggestions. But nobody's couch smelled like chemical warfare anymore. One Saturday morning, I was on my knees remulching the bed along the east fence when I heard footsteps on the gravel path that runs behind the houses. I looked up, expecting Emma with lemonade. It was Karen. She looked smaller than I remembered. Gray cardigan, loose linen pants, hair pulled back without its usual helmet of hairspray. No blazer, no clipboard, no armor at all. In her hands was a Tupperware container wrapped in a faded dish towel. Zucchini muffins, she said, holding it out like a peace offering or a bomb. From the farmer's market co-op. They're vegan, I think. I stood, wiped my hands on my jeans, and took the container. Thank you. She hovered eyes on the mulch. I saw the new signs. They're nice. The little heart is cute. Emma's touch. A long, awkward beat. Somewhere down the block, a lawnmower droned. A cardinal called from the preserve. I've been going to therapy, she said suddenly, as if the words had been sitting on her tongue for weeks. Twice a week. In the city, so nobody here sees the car. I nodded. It's helping. A little. I still flinch at shadows, but I'm working on it. She risked a glance at me. I owe you more than muffins. You already resigned. You apologized on the phone. That's a lot. Not enough. She took a shaky breath. I watched your wife's obituary again last night. I'm so sorry I never said anything when it happened. I was busy writing someone a citation for Christmas lights in January. The confession hung between us like smoke. I set the Tupperware on the fence post. Claire used to grow peppermint along our old fence in the city. Said it kept mosquitoes away. I just expanded on her idea. Karen gave the ghost of a smile. Smart woman. She was. Another silence, softer this time. I'm trying to make amends where I can, she said. I paid Grace's solar panel permit fees out of pocket, anonymously. And I wrote letters to the Halversons about their gnome. Told them it was charming. I almost laughed. They'll probably frame it. She looked toward the preserve where sunlight slanted through the leaves in golden bars. I used to hate that tree line. Thought it was chaos waiting to spill over. Now, I think maybe I was the chaos. A breeze stirred the new leaves. Somewhere deeper in the woods, something small crashed through the underbrush and went quiet again. Karen squared her shoulders the way people do when they're about to do something terrifying. Would you show me how the system works? Not to copy it. Just so I understand what I tried to destroy. I studied her for a long moment, then I nodded. We walked the perimeter together. I explained the sensor's pressure valves, the exact ratio of peppermint to capsaicin that annoys but never harms. She listened the way drowning people listen to lifeguards, taking mental notes, nodding, asking quiet questions. When we reached the control box, she stared at the neat wiring like it was a miracle. I could have killed someone's pet, she whispered. Or started a fire. I was so angry at everything. You stopped yourself from the fire, I said. That counts. She didn't answer, but her eyes filled. When the tour was over, she lingered at the gate. I'm selling the house, leaving Briar Glen. My nephew's taking Bixby for a while. The house still smells like skunk and shame. Realtor says it'll take 6 months of ozone and new drywall. I didn't know what to say to that. She managed a wobbly smile. If you ever need anything muffins weed pulling someone to testify that you're a saint, you know where to find me until the for sale sign goes up. I'll keep the muffins in mind. She turned to go, then paused. Daniel? Yeah. Your wife's peppermint trick. It's beautiful. Thank you for the reminder that sometimes the softest things are the strongest. Then she walked away, shoulders a little straighter than when she'd arrived. That night, Emma and I ate zucchini muffins on the porch, while the new Meisters sighed their gentle peppermint benediction into the dusk. A fat skunk waddled into view at the edge of the yard, sniffed once, wrinkled its nose in theatrical disgust, and ambled back into the trees without raising its tail. Emma leaned her head on my shoulder. Think she'll really be okay? I think she's trying. That's more than most people manage. We watched the fireflies blink on one by one. For the first time since Claire died, the night smelled like hope instead of loss. And the fence line glowed soft amber, keeping watch. Summer arrived in full humid glory. The preserve behind our houses turned into a green cathedral of cicadas and sunlight, and Briar Glen finally began to feel like the place the brochures had promised all along. The county audit wrapped up in July. The final report was 38 pages of polite devastation. $17,400 in documented misuse of HOA funds, 27 questionable fines issued over 3 years. One attempted arson referred to the district attorney, who declined to press charges in light of extraordinary remorse and cooperation. Recommendation that Briar Glen dissolve the old HOA and form a new one with term limits, open books, and zero tolerance for personal vendettas. We held the vote on a Saturday in August, under the same gazebo where the rebellion had started. Turnout was 94%. The new charter passed 112-3. The 3 holdouts were Cole's cousin Gerald's golf buddy and a woman who still believed Karen walked on water. They moved out by October. Tamara was elected president for a full 2-year term. I somehow got roped into chairing the brand new Environmental Harmony Committee, which sounded official until you realized its entire mission statement was, "Don't be a jerk to wildlife or your neighbors." Emma designed the logo, a skunk, and a smiling next to a peppermint leaf. We put it on t-shirts. They sold out in 48 hours. Life settled into a rhythm I hadn't known I was allowed to have. Emma started middle school and made the robotics team. Jasper turned 12 and decided stairs were now optional. I took up woodworking in the garage building raised garden beds for anyone who asked. On weekends, the cul-de-sac filled with the smell of burgers and the sound of kids shrieking through sprinklers. Regular ones, not the peppermint kind. Karen's house sold surprisingly fast. The new owners were a young couple expecting their first baby. They painted the front door teal Vikram's old forbidden color and hung a porch swing. They never knew the full legend of the previous owner. I decided some ghosts are better left buried under fresh paint. One September afternoon, I was staining a picnic table in the driveway when a familiar white Prius pulled up. Karen stepped out wearing sunglasses and the same gray cardigan from the muffin day, only now it looked like it actually fit her. She carried a small gift bag. "I'm on my way out of town for good," she said without preamble. Thought I'd drop this off. Inside the bag was a hand-thrown ceramic planter, forest green with tiny white skunk silhouettes marching around the rim. On the bottom, in careful script, someone had written, "For Claire's peppermint. May it keep growing, Jay." I turned it over in my hands, throat suddenly tight. "I took a pottery class," she explained, cheeks pink. "Therapist said I needed a hobby that didn't involve clipboards. It's beautiful." She shrugged, embarrassed. "I still jump when I smell strong mint, but I'm working on that too." We stood in the quiet hum of late summer. A monarch butterfly drifted between us and landed on the planter. "I'm moving to Asheville," she said. "Small apartment near the river. They have a community garden. I'm going to try growing tomatoes without measuring the exact distance between plants. We'll see how that goes." I smiled. "I have faith." She looked past me to the backyard where Emma laughing with friends around the new fire pit. "You built something good here, Daniel. Not just the sprinklers, all of it." We all did. Karen nodded once, then got back in her car. She rolled the window down before pulling away. If you ever need a character witness, she said, or someone to scare raccoons with a really loud whistle, tell me. I owe you a lifetime supply. I lifted the planter in salute. Drive safe, Judith. She smiled small real and a little tearful and drove off. That night, Emma and I filled the new planter with peppermint starts Claire and I had grown the year before everything fell apart. We set it on the back deck where the morning sun hits first. Within weeks, it was overflowing bright green and fragrant, spilling over the edges like it had been waiting years to be invited back. Sometimes when the wind shifts just right, the whole backyard smells like Claire's laugh. And the skunks, they still visit. But now they pause at the fence line, sniff the gentle peppermint breeze, and politely turn around. Nature, it turns out, is perfectly happy to respect boundaries when you ask nicely. And so finally are we. October brought the first real chill to Briar Glen. The kind that makes the leaves explode into color and turns every breath into a small white cloud of wonder. We decided to throw a block party. Not the stiff HOA-approved fall social with store-bought cookies and name tags. A real one. Grills on the curb, folding tables stretching from mailbox to mailbox. Kids in Halloween costumes running wild, while the adults drank spiked cider and told the same stories over and over, each version slightly taller than the last. Tamara hung string lights from every tree. Vikram DJ'd from his garage with a playlist that somehow made 90s hip-hop and bluegrass sound like they belonged together. Someone rented a bounce house shaped like a giant pumpkin. Someone else brought a cotton candy machine that immediately became the center of the universe. I manned the grill in an apron Emma had screen printed for me, a cartoon skunk wearing a superhero cape, and the words, stink-proof since 2025. Every time a new neighbor wandered over for a burger, they asked for the origin story. By the third telling, I'd added explosions and a dramatic slow-motion sequence where the peppermint mist saved the day. Around dusk, the new owners of Karen's old house, Maya and Leo, showed up carrying a tray of homemade empanadas and wide, slightly terrified smiles. They'd heard rumors. They wanted the truth. So we gave it to them. The whole ridiculous, glorious saga. The midnight sabotage. The double skunk sunroom. Apocalypse. The county attorney walking in like an avenging angel, the zucchini muffin peace treaty. By the end, Maya was crying with laughter, and Leo was taking notes for a potential screenplay. At 8:00 p.m. sharp, Tamara climbed onto a picnic table with a wireless microphone and a grin that could power the neighborhood. Attention citizens of Free Briar Glen, cheers and whistles. Tonight we have a very special presentation. She gestured toward the street. Headlights appeared slow, deliberate. A white Prius rolled to a stop at the edge of the party lights. Karen stepped out. The crowd went still for half a heartbeat. Then someone, I think it was Phil, started clapping. One by one, everyone joined in until the cul-de-sac echoed with applause that had nothing to do with pity and everything to do with recognition. She wore jeans and a soft green sweater the color of fallen leaves. No blazer, no armor. She carried a bakery box and looked like she might bolt at any second. Tamara hopped down and hugged her, an actual fierce hug. Karen let herself be hugged, eyes squeezed shut, shoulders trembling. When the applause finally faded, Tamara handed her the mic. Karen cleared her throat 3 times before she could speak. Hi, everybody. Her voice cracked. I practiced this speech in the car for 2 hours and forgot every word the second I saw all of you. Laughter warm and kind. I don't deserve to be here tonight, she continued. But you let me come anyway, and that means more than I can say. She opened the box, 24 perfect peppermint chocolate cupcakes, each topped with a tiny fondant skunk wearing a party hat. A collective awe rose up. I brought dessert, she said, cheeks flaming, and I brought something else. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. This is the deed restriction I secretly added to my house sale. It says the new owners, Maya and Leo, are allowed to paint their front door any color they want forever. No approval needed. I paid the lawyer myself. Maya burst into happy tears and ran to hug her. Leo followed, picking Karen up off the ground. The party erupted. Later, when the kids were sticky with cotton candy and the adults were 3 cups deep into cider, Karen found me by the fire pit. I'm staying in Asheville, she said quietly. Got the apartment. Planted tomatoes on the balcony. They're terrible, but they're mine. Good for you. She watched Emma and a gaggle of middle schoolers attempting a TikTok dance in the bounce house. I read Claire's obituary again, she said. The part where it said she volunteered at the children's hospital dressing up as a peppermint candy for the cancer ward at Christmas. I nodded throat tight. I started volunteering there last month. Same costume. The kids call me Peppermint Judy. It's the best thing I've ever been called. I couldn't speak for a second. She nudged my shoulder. Your wife saved a lot of people, Daniel. Some of us just took a little longer to get in line. Then she handed me one of the cupcakes, took one for herself, and we ate them, standing side by side while the party swirled around us like fireworks. The fondant skunk tasted like chocolate and forgiveness. And for the first time, all night the air smelled only of wood smoke cider, and the faintest whisper of peppermint carried on the breeze from the backyard that had started it all. Karen raised her cupcake in a small toast. To second chances. I clinked mine against it. To peppermint, I said. She laughed, really laughed, and for one shining moment, the past felt far away, and the future felt possible. Around midnight, the party began to wind down. Kids were carried to cars asleep on shoulders. String lights blinked off one by one. Someone started a group hug that accidentally included half the neighborhood. Karen slipped away quietly, waving from her car window as she pulled out. Emma and I stood in the middle of the empty street, looking at the quiet houses glowing softly. Think she'll be okay? Emma asked. I put my arm around her. I think she already is. Overhead, the stars looked close enough to touch, and somewhere behind us, the gentle hiss of the sprinklers kept their nightly vigil not as weapons anymore, but as a lullaby. A skunk strolled across the far end of the cul-de-sac, paused under a streetlight, sniffed once in our direction, and calmly turned back toward the preserve. Emma grinned up at me. Even the skunks came to the party. Yeah, I said, squeezing her shoulder, and they behaved themselves. We walked home under a sky full of October stars, the scent of peppermint and wood smoke following us all the way to the door. Some victories are loud. Some are quiet. Ours smelled like forgiveness and tasted like chocolate peppermint frosting. And it was perfect. The following spring, Briar Glen did something no one thought possible. It threw a second block party bigger, louder, and deliberately scheduled for the exact anniversary of the night the county attorney walked in and ended the old regime. We called it Stink-Free Day. By noon, the cul-de-sac was closed to traffic. Someone strung a banner between two oaks that read, 1 year since the Great Liberation, peppermint for everyone. Tamara had official t-shirts made black cotton with a winking skunk holding a tiny cocktail umbrella and the words, I survived the HOA collapse. They sold out before the grills were even hot. There was a bouncy castle again, this time shaped like a giant peppermint candy. Vikram upgraded the playlist. Maya and Leo brought a piñata, shaped like a red blazer. The kids beat it until candy and shredded copies of old violation notices rained down like confetti. I was stationed at a folding table labeled Ask the Skunk Whisperer, handing out starter kits, a small bottle of peppermint oil, a motion sensor light, and a laminated card Emma illustrated titled, How to Politely Tell Wildlife You're Not the Holiday Inn. By 3 o'clock, the line wrapped around the bounce house. At 4, Tamara climbed onto the same picnic table stage with her microphone and a grin that hadn't left her face in 12 months. Before we cut the cake, yes, there's cake, we have one last surprise. The crowd hushed. From the far end of the street came the soft putter of a white Prius. It parked and Karen stepped out wearing jeans, a Briar Glen t-shirt 2 sizes too big, and a nervous smile that slowly grew into something radiant when the entire neighborhood started cheering before she'd even closed the door. She carried a sheet cake balanced on both hands like a sacred offering. The frosting was white with green piping that read, Happy Stink-Free Day, Love Peppermint Judy Hearts. The applause was thunderous. Someone started a chant, Judy, Judy, and it spread until even the teenagers joined in. Karen set the cake on the main table, wiped her eyes with the sleeve of the oversized shirt, and took the mic Tamara offered. I drove 3 hours for this, she laughed, voice shaky. And I still don't have the words. She looked around at the faces, some wary a year ago, now open and warm. I used to think order was the highest good, she said. Turns out the highest good is people who forgive you when you don't deserve it, and then invite you to their party anyway. She turned to me and Emma standing near the grill. Daniel, Emma. You didn't just save your backyard. You reminded every single one of us what community actually means. Thank you for giving me the chance to become someone I'm finally not ashamed to be. Emma, now officially too cool for public emotion at age 13, surprised everyone by sprinting across the grass and throwing her arms around Karen's waist. Karen hugged her back like she was afraid the moment would vanish. Then Emma grabbed the mic. My dad says peppermint works because it's gentle, but firm. You don't have to hurt something to set a boundary. You just have to be clear. She looked at Karen. You learned that the hard way, but you learned it. So, welcome home, Judy. The crowd lost it. Grown men cried into their pulled pork sandwiches. Karen could only nod, tears streaming. Later, when the sun sank low and the string lights came on, the kids organized a flashlight parade down the middle of the street. Someone handed out sparklers. Someone else cranked up Sweet Caroline. And the entire family sang at the top of their lungs, off-key and perfect. Karen found me sitting on the tailgate of my truck watching the chaos with a cider in hand. Mind company. I scooted over. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching Emma lead a conga line of second graders through the sparkler glow. I got accepted into the Master Gardener program, Karen said quietly. And the hospital made the peppermint candy costume official staff uniform. They're calling the volunteer wing Claire's Corner now. I felt my eyes sting. She would have loved that. Karen nudged my shoulder. I kept one of the old red blazers, cut it up and made quilt squares. Gave them to the kids in oncology so they could draw on them with fabric markers. They turned it into superhero capes. I laughed through the lump in my throat. Claire definitely would have loved that. We watched a toddler in a skunk onesie waddle past, chasing bubbles. I'm not moving back, Karen said. Asheville's home now, but I'll visit, if that's okay. Anytime I said we save you a cupcake. She smiled soft and real. The song changed to something slow and sweet. Couples started swaying in the street. Emma ran up, grabbed both our hands, and dragged us into the makeshift dance floor. Before I knew it, I was slow dancing with my daughter while Karen was twirled by Phil, then Vikram, then Rosa, then every kid who could reach her hands. The sparklers burned down to nubs hissing and popping like quiet fireworks. And overhead, the same stars that had watched the worst night of our lives now watched the best. Somewhere in the preserve, an owl called once low and satisfied. The sprinklers gave their nightly sigh of peppermint mist carrying Claire's laugh across the backyards on a gentle breeze. Karen caught my eye across the crowd and lifted her plastic cup in a silent toast. I lifted mine back. To peppermint. To second chances. To the night the neighborhood learned how to be kind without being walked on, and how to be strong without being cruel. Emma leaned her head against my side, sleepy and happy. Best stink-free day ever, she mumbled. I kissed the top of her head. Yeah, kiddo, I whispered. And tomorrow will be even better. Because some stories don't end with revenge. They end with a street full of light, a cake that says thank you, and the soft, stubborn scent of peppermint reminding everyone, even the skunks, that gentle can be fierce. And forgiveness can be the strongest boundary of all. 5 years later, on a perfect May evening, the cul-de-sac is quiet, except for the low hum of cicadas and the occasional burst of laughter drifting from open windows. Emma, now 17 taller than me, and home from her first year of college on summer break, is out back teaching a gaggle of neighborhood kids how to adjust the ultrasonic myosters. The system has been upgraded twice since the original wore solar panels Wi-Fi. Controls even a gentle voice recording of Claire saying, "Shoo sweetheart's wrong yard," when something larger than a raccoon trips the sensor. The kids think it's magic. Emma just calls it Mom's ghost doing night patrol. Jasper passed 2 winters ago, old and content on his favorite corner of the couch. We buried him under the peppermint planter Karen sent the first year, now a sprawling bush the size of a small car. His gravestone is a smooth river rock Emma painted with a single white stripe, and the words, "Good Boy 0, sprays on his watch. The house next door, Karen's old place, has seen 3 families since Maya and Leo. The current owners are a retired couple who turned the sunroom into a library and hung a plaque that reads, "Site of the Great Skunk Incident of 2025. May we never forget the power of peppermint." Every new neighbor gets the full tour and the full story on move-in day. It's become local legend. Karen Judith, though only the hospital kids still call her Peppermint, Judy drives down once a month. She keeps a room at the bed and breakfast on the square, but she always ends up on our porch swing with a glass of sweet tea, trading gardening disasters with Emma, and arguing with me about tomato varieties. Her hair is completely silver now, worn loose to her shoulders, and she laughs louder than she ever did in a red blazer. Last year, she published a children's book, The Skunk Who Learned to Knock, illustrated by the oncology kids at Claire's Corner. All proceeds go to the hospital's art therapy program. Emma did the cover lettering. There's a tiny dedication on the title page nobody notices unless they know to look. For Claire, who taught us that the softest things can save the hardest hearts. Tonight, the whole street is gathered again, smaller than the stink-free day blowouts, but cozier. Just a potluck to celebrate the new community garden we built on the empty lot where Cole's house used to stand but before he sold and fled to parts unknown. Tables stretch end to end, tamales, peach cobbler dumplings, brisket, and of course, zucchini muffins. The kids run wild with sparklers, while the adults trade stories that get funnier every year. Tamara, still president term limits be damned, raises her glass. To the night we stopped being afraid of our own neighbors. Glasses clink. Karen stands on a chair, someone's idea of a joke, and clears her throat. I have an announcement, she says, cheeks pink. The hospital is naming the new pediatric garden after someone who never got to see how far her peppermint traveled. She looks straight at me and Emma. Groundbreaking is next month. It's going to be called Claire's Peaceful Patch, and every bed will be bordered with peppermint. She doesn't need to finish. We already know. Emma's eyes fill. I squeeze her hand. Later, when the fireflies come out and the little ones start falling asleep on blankets, Karen finds me by the old peppermint planter. It's enormous now, sprawling over half the deck railing, fragrant and wild and perfect. She hands me a small envelope. Inside is a single photograph, the hospital garden rendering. In the center stands a life-size bronze statue of a woman in a peppermint candy costume, arms wide open, smiling like she's about to hug the whole world. At the base, the inscription reads, "She taught us how to be gentle and fierce at the same time. We are still learning." I can't speak. Karen just rests her hand on my shoulder. Somewhere in the dark, the sprinklers sigh, their nightly greeting one soft puff of mint-scented mist that drifts across the yard like a blessing. A skunk appears at the edge of the preserve, silhouetted against the moon. It pauses, sniffs the air, and finding nothing but kindness and the faint memory of a woman who loved children and peppermint, turns peacefully back into the trees. Emma joins us, slipping her arms around both our waists. Karen smiles at the stars. Claire was right, she whispers. The soft things really are the strongest. I look at the two of them, my daughter and the woman who once tried to burn my world down, now family, in every way that matters, and feel the years settle into something warm and finished. The night air smells like wood-smoked zucchini muffins and home. And for the rest of our lives, whenever anyone in Briar Glen catches that scent on the breeze, they smile without knowing exactly why. They just know they're safe. They know they're forgiven. And they know the peppermint is still on guard.